This is Waterfront Station, and it's one of Vancouver's best kept secrets, hiding in plain sight. This 110-year-old station was one of the biggest passenger depots in Canada during the golden era of rail travel, but today it's a gateway to adventure, a top-shelf restaurant, and a portal to the past when passenger trains ruled the Great White North. This series is all about uncovering the best kept secrets of Canada, from world-class meals from top-notch chefs to the greatest adventures that you've never heard of. And whether it's stunning landscapes or breathtaking vistas, this series is all tied together by the history that built our country. By air, by land, or by sea, regardless of how I'm getting there, I'm digging deep to take you along for a ride unlike any other. And today's focus is Waterfront Station, a property that I have been absolutely obsessed with since I moved here 3 years ago, and after this video, I think you will too. Now, this video is sponsored by BetterHelp, but to understand why Waterfront Station is such a hidden gem, we need to rewind back to 1885.
The next station is Terminus Station, Waterfront.
The story of Waterfront Station actually starts near Revelstoke, BC in 1885. The Canadian Pacific had just completed the biggest engineering project in the world, which was a coast-to-coast steel ribbon stretching from Quebec City to the Pacific in Vancouver. And 9 months later, the first passenger train would complete its first run to Port Moody on July 4th, 1886. And the reason being was Port Moody was the original port city, but only a few months later, in an attempt to make it easier for steamships to dock, the Canadian Pacific would stretch the line further west to Vancouver, and that would become the new western terminus. And the first station, it was modest. It was a 2-story red wooden structure perched over the waterfront, and it would serve passengers only for 12 years until 1899, when it would be replaced by the new Waterfront Station. And the Canadian Pacific would unveil it as a stunning chateau-style station with 2 massive turrets, one of which was rounded, one of which was not, and an arched entranceway made from limestone that came by train from Calgary. But it never saw its 15th birthday because the city's rapid growth demanded something bigger. And although the Chateau Castle-esque station would have really added a nice level of charm to Vancouver's skyline today, it was basically copy and pasted in Quebec City the year after, with Gare du Palais, which still stands today as Quebec City's train station, and I actually covered it in depth in my video on the Chateau Frontenac, as well as taking the train out of Quebec City to Toronto, which you can watch after this video. They would break ground on the new Waterfront Station in 1912, and the new station would drop the chateau-style design in favor of a much simpler style that they had used actually on Winnipeg's new station that had opened only 6 years earlier, but Vancouver's would be drastically bigger. And they actually didn't knock down the old station at first, they actually built beside it, but would demolish the old station later to make space for more passenger platforms for the increased traffic. The new station would feature a red brick facade with beautiful limestone trim on top, all dominated by a row of smooth columns lining West Cordova Street. And the interior itself would see more columns flanking the interior, along a beautiful marbled floor with beautiful chandeliers lining the ceiling, and something that may actually surprise locals today, they even had public bathrooms in the main hall. But my 2 favorite components are the 2 large clocks facing each other on the east and west wings of the main hall, as well as the multiple paintings depicting some of the most scenic landscapes that you would encounter along the Canadian Pacific main line, spanning from the Bow Falls in Banff, just outside of the Banff Springs Hotel, Castle Mountain, which sits between Banff and Lake Louise, to Mount Stephen and the Kicking Horse River along the Continental Divide in Field, BC. And come on, if you do not recognize this painting of Lake Louise, I think you need your Canadian citizenship revoked. And like the Newfies when they heard Quebec wanted to leave Canada back in the 90s, get them out of there. The new Waterfront Station would officially open on August 1st, 1914. It would be the largest in the country west of Montreal, and you could actually ride all the way from Windsor Station in Montreal to Vancouver in just 5 days. It's pretty groundbreaking for the time. And the station wasn't just a rail terminal, it was a global gateway, because behind the station was Pier B, which hosted the entire Canadian Pacific Empress line of steamships, named after the Empress herself, Queen Victoria. And these steamships carried passengers to Victoria over on Vancouver Island and across the Pacific to Asia. And whether it was passengers departing at Pier B over the decades, or cargo or freight coming along the harbor, whether it was by rail or by sails, anything that moved west through Canada would end up here at the Vancouver waterfront. And if you're familiar with my series on the Grand Railway Hotels of Canada, whether you were staying at the Canadian Pacific's Hotel Vancouver or Canadian National's Hotel Vancouver, there was two of them. They had horse and buggy service that would pick up passengers at the hotel for their transcontinental journey and drop them off at the station, or following the completion of their trip and bringing them up to the hotel. Now today outside the station stands the Angel of Victory, which is a memorial statue paying tribute to the more than 1,100 Canadian Pacific employees and Canadian patriots that paid the ultimate sacrifice during World War I and would never return. And this is a 7-foot tall statue weighing over 3,000 pounds, depicting a female angel and a fallen Canadian Pacific soldier ascending to heaven. And this is actually the third replica of the Angel of Victory statue, with the second being in Winnipeg, and it sat outside the Canadian Pacific Station at the corner of Higgins and Main, and the original is still on display in Montreal's Windsor Station in the main waiting room, and all three of which still remain today. Now here in Vancouver, the statue was originally put on the west wing of the building, but in 1970 was relocated to the east wing to make way to build the Granville Square and the parking lot that resides there today. And that shift actually symbolized the beginning of the end for passenger rail travel in Canada, because post-World War II, ridership had rebounded, and the Canadian Pacific president Buck Crump ordered a new passenger train fleet that would debut in 1955, a stainless steel streamliner train with scenic viewing domes atop the cars. And this train would be named the Canadian, and it was the perfect way to take in the natural beauty of Canada's landscapes by rail. But when the Trans-Canada Highway was completed in 1962, it ushered in the great decline of passenger trains, because you didn't need to sit on a train with strangers, you could just drive it yourself. So in 1978, Pierre Trudeau's government formed a new government crown corporation, VRL Canada, and they would absorb all Canadian Pacific and Canadian National passenger services, and VRL would operate out of the Waterfront Station for the rest of the year, but in 1979, they would opt to move all passenger trains to Pacific Central in False Creek, and on October 29th, 1979, the final transcontinental train pulled down the tracks and out of downtown Vancouver, with 200 passengers bound from Montreal, and ironically 15 minutes late, never to return again. Now today, it's been almost half a century since that last long-distance passenger train departed, but Waterfront Station has evolved a lot since then. 1977 would see the debut of the Seabus, which connected downtown Vancouver to North Vancouver's Lonsdale Quay by passenger ferry, boarding passengers off a floating pier that connected to the station via a walking bridge over the tracks below. In 1985 would see the launch of the Expo Line SkyTrain, which is a monorail/subway hybrid that would connect Waterfront Station all the way into Metro Vancouver and Surrey. 1995 saw the West Coast Express, which was a commuter train that would run on the old Canadian Pacific Main Line going to Port Moody, Coquitlam, and Mission. And 2009 saw the Canada Line SkyTrain debut with service to Richmond and the YVR Airport, just in time for the 2010 Olympics. And today, Waterfront Station is still one of the busiest passenger depots in the country, seeing almost 100,000 riders walk through these doors every day. And that's not even counting the thousands of cruise ship passengers on the water's edge every morning from April until October. The rest of this video is some of the best kept secrets hiding in plain sight out of Waterfront Station, from things to do, spots to see, and more. But it all starts here in the Great Hall. The Great Hall was for economy passengers waiting for their train, but to the right was the lounge where sleeping class passengers would reside. And that lounge still holds its historic charm today in the format of Rogue. Now, Rogue is a local joint here in Vancouver and the sister restaurant to one of the most popular chains in town, Steamworks. And at the helm of all of it is executive chef Wesley Dennis. Chef Wes has been doing this for almost longer than I've been alive, and he's focused on making local ingredients his star, with over 85% of the menu served here in the station being composed of Canadian products served in a casual environment with fine dining presentation on the plate. And the big showstopper is a phenomenal melt-in-your-mouth brisket that starts actually 4 days before it hits the plate. Chef starts by rubbing it down with his signature salt, pepper, sugar, and coffee spice blend. It's left to cure overnight in the walk-in fridge before getting charred under the broiler the next morning, and then left to go low and slow for 12 hours. And if you don't believe what I'm telling you here, well, you be the judge yourself. My mouth is literally watering watching back this footage, but Chef serves up his mouth-watering brisket over a flour tortilla with a house-made barbecue sauce, crisp cabbage, pico de gallo, and fresh cilantro to top. And couple that with an open-faced apple pie, starting with a ginger caramel, tossed with crisp Granny Smith apples, and baked in a fluffy puff pastry, served warm with an almond crumble, cold vanilla ice cream coming just down the road in False Creek, served a la mode, and topped with caramel. And almost like a sign from the man upstairs, when I heard one of my old teammates from down in the US were in town, I knew exactly who I wanted to share this experience with. Now this is Tim, and we played a season of pro hockey together in upstate New York, and at first glance, it is hard to believe that we're sitting in a century-old passenger lounge, especially considering how often beautiful and historical landmarks across Canada have been torn down or demolished. That alone, I think, is worth the price of admission. But we started things off with the pork bao, featuring seared pork belly, pickled veg, and cilantro, which was absolutely phenomenal. For starters, Tim and I had to go with that succulent, mouth-watering brisket, and my mouth is watering just doing this voiceover right now. We all know there's always room for dessert, so we found some space for their apple galette, which I mentioned earlier. I mean, look at that smile on Tim's face. Looks so good.
It's crazy.
If you're a local, ride the Seabus across the harbor or take the SkyTrain down, come get a brisket taco. Rogue has super quick service if you're transitioning through the station, and whether you're a local or a tourist getting off a cruise ship, Rogue is delivering a must-do dining experience that is so historical and so charming, and much like the steam locomotives that once ran down the platform only steps away, it is truly full steam ahead here. But as much as it breaks my heart that long-distance trains don't operate out of the great station anymore, I know we all have something that we're dealing with, and you might be able to use a little bit of help from today's video sponsor, BetterHelp. Life can be tough, and whether you're bracing the winter blues of -30 in Winnipeg, have something that's been bubbling under the surface that you just need a little bit of help addressing, or relationship problems, it starts with BetterHelp, because BetterHelp is making it easier and more accessible than ever before to get therapy. You simply go online, sign up, answer a few questions about your unique situation, and in no time they'll have you matched with a therapist to help with your specific situation. And let's say you're undecided, well, let me help you get over the fence into a new start, into a new you, by getting you 10% off your first month of therapy at BetterHelp. When you go to the link in the video description, you click on that link and you use my code TRAV, my name, TRAV, for 10% off your first month of therapy. And what are you waiting for? Start that journey towards a new and improved, better you. And thank you very much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. My next great secret of the station is actually the SkyTrain. And when the Canadian Pacific let passengers off on the platform, those passenger trains would leave to run through a 1.5 kilometer long tunnel that would go from the rail yards along the station and look something like this, and run all the way over to False Creek for servicing, repairs, and being washed for the next departure later that day. And this tunnel would have you end up on the west side or the east side of False Creek, but the west side is essentially today's Yaletown Roundhouse. And when the final Canadian Pacific passenger train left these yards in 1978, later that year the city announced plans to remove all the industry and rail yards for Expo 86. Now, it's actually crazy to compare Yaletown in 1978 to today in 2025, how what was once an entire industrial area is almost completely unrecognizable with the skyline of apartments it holds today. But one of the two buildings that still remain is the Yaletown Roundhouse. And today that roundhouse has been transformed into a free public museum that features the same check-in counter that the Canadian used out of Waterfront Station, as well as steam locomotive 374, which was the locomotive to pull the first passenger train across Canada from Montreal in 1886. And although she would be considered a small locomotive by most standards, I'm a pretty big man, and I like tiny compared to this mammoth of a machine. If I'm being honest, I really wish that Canada did a better job to preserve and bring some of our old steam locomotives back to life like they've done doing such a great job down in the United States, because I've seen many sleeping steamers across Canada, I've ridden a couple and made videos on them so far this year, but what a shame it is that most of these are just museum pieces and not doing what they were built to do, pulling passengers to a new adventure or a new experience. But at least here at Yaletown, the museum is completely free and super easy to get here. Only 2 SkyTrain stops down the line from Waterfront Station, and that is the Canada line too, if you're riding. Remember that tunnel that I mentioned? Well, the west end came out at Yaletown, but the east end came out here in False Creek. And that is where my final stop of the day is, specifically here at the False Creek Marina. So it is a beautiful day here in False Creek. So this is the home of the Dragonboat BC team. Dragonboating was born out of Expo 86 with all the old Canadian Pacific lands, where all the freight and all the passengers would get service. We got cleaned out of the city, and with clean water came the dragonboating, and yours truly is going to get put to work. This is the boat. Everything will be put except for that one. And then that's my partner, Kevin, right there. Best looking guy on the boat. Boy, oh boy, was I in for a workout like I have never experienced in my life. This morning was a bit of a bold adventure for me. I mean, I've really enjoyed finding new ways to get into the water in this series, but dragon boating is something special. This is a full-on competitive dragon boat practice, and this team was nice enough to allow me to join them for a 90-minute practice, and like I mentioned earlier, it is a seriously killer workout. Starting with a few laps around False Creek, and turning back at the Burrard Bridge, and believe it or not, once upon a time there was actually a railway trestle in the middle of all of this, connecting Yaletown to Granville Island, which is actually the second most popular tourist attraction in all of Canada. But getting on the water on a beautiful morning like this, in one of the best cities in Canada, all made possible by the urbanization and the evolution of the rail yards that once lived here and connected all the way back to Waterfront Station. And if you want to try dragon boating, I'll put a link in the video description to learn more. It's a seriously cool thing to do if you got a couple hours in town. That's dragon boating. 40 years ago, none of this existed. This was all railway, industrial land, freight, passenger, but this is why Waterfront Station is one of the best kept secrets in Vancouver, because of this. If you're a local in Vancouver and you have never gotten the chance to appreciate what our city has to offer, or you're a tourist coming by air, land, or sea, come experience Vancouver's Waterfront Station. From all the incredible things to do only steps away, to the history from within, brisket tacos from a chef that was born to make great food, to the easy ways to get in the water, experience some historical relics, or even if you're transitioning through the station, it truly has it all here, and in my opinion, is why it's one of Vancouver's best kept secrets. I want to know, what's your favorite hidden gem in Vancouver? Did you board a train here during the golden era of rail travel, or have a story to tell? I want to hear it in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because next week I'm going from Waterfront Station to the Grand Railway Hotel that this place has served since 1939, just steps away down the street. I want to say thank you so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for watching. And I cannot wait to see you next week for the next episode in this series. I'll see you then.